Hi, welcome to Mennonite Farmhouse. I'm Leanne, and today we are making pizza. And if you're new to my channel, I do cooking and baking from scratch, canning and dehydrating videos, and anything else that might evolve around the kitchen island. And if you're into that sort of thing, feel free to subscribe to the channel. And if you find value in this video, please hit the thumbs up. It sure helps my channel to grow, and I sure do appreciate it. Now this pizza dough, it's a tried and true recipe for me. I've been making it at least 5.5 years now. It's my go-to pizza crust. Made some others, but I'm in love with this dough. I mean, if you made any other of my recipes, you know I'm not going to stiff you on this one. This is one thing I've been wanting to show you, and today is the day. If you know me personally, hit down in the comments here and tell people how good this is if you feel like it, because I've served this at church functions, I've served it at quilt club functions. It's that good that, you know, I just want to share it. And actually the other day was my husband and I's little meet anniversary, and I asked him what he wanted me to make. He said pizza because it's Friday night. I'm like, really? But you know, that's just a testimony of how good this pizza dough is. And so, enough of me blabbing and talking it up, because it really doesn't need talked up. Let's get to cooking. We'll need 3/4 of a cup of warm water between 100 and 110 degrees, a teaspoon of yeast, a tablespoon of sugar, a tablespoon of canola oil or oil of your choice, a half a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of lemon juice. I use bottled lemon juice because, you know, it will last a long time in the refrigerator. A tablespoon of milk powder. I use instant non-fat dry milk. 2 1/4 cups of bread flour. And if you don't have bread flour on hand, you can use all-purpose flour and just add vital wheat gluten. It'll be the same thing. I'll have to look it up and tell you what's the ratio there. I just don't know off the top of my head. All right, let's get the mixing. All right, you want to add your warm water. If you don't have a thermometer, you can easily tell if your water is too warm by putting a finger in the water, and if you can last more than 10 seconds, it's good to go. Now we want to add our yeast. And I'm using dry active yeast, and I don't have a problem of not waiting for it to proof. So if you want to let it sit for 10 minutes, go right ahead. We have our water, our yeast, and sugar and salt added. Now the milk powder, the oil, and the lemon juice. I think the lemon juice helps it be more tender. Now, if you're doing this by hand, I suggest just mixing up half of it to get it started. This recipe is also actually meant for the bread machine. It makes one nice sized pizza, or my husband prefers me to cut the dough in half and make 2 thin crusts, about 13 inches round. All right, we got that in there, and I'm using a dough whisk. I highly recommend getting one that's a stainless steel whisk, just because it can go in the dishwasher then. All right, we're gonna get this all together here. All right. Now you just want to let it come together by pushing it forward with your palms. Now if you were using a stand mixer and you have a dough hook to knead it, after you get your bowl clean along the sides, that's when you will want to start counting. And if you're using a KitchenAid, you will want to count 5 to 7 minutes of knead time on 2. And if you're using a Bosch, 8 to 10. And then the Bosch is so good that you wouldn't have to let it rest. Make sure your counter is clean when you go to knead it. And I've learned that you can not knead it and actually just let it rest for an hour, then knead it 5 minutes instead of 10. and it'll be the same product. Now, for kneading, you just want to roll with your palms against the table here. And I wanted to show you by hand, just prove it, that you don't need a fancy machine or a fancy bread machine or a stand mixer to have pizza on your table. Now see how it's less sticky now? So this is where you start to time your 10 minutes if you're doing it by hand. All right. Bring it back. And this is when you get the kids involved who have lots of energy and are probably in mischief by now and screaming at the top of their lungs. But if you get them in the kitchen, they will understand where their food comes from and what it takes to make food and maybe actually eat it more, even though we all eat pizza easily, right? All right, I'll be back when I get this somewhat close to knowing when it's done being kneaded. All right, it's been 3 minutes of me kneading this dough. So I want to show you how the tension of the dough is lessened and it's easier to take your palms and glide across the counter. And notice I don't have anything on the counter to make it sticky or not stick to the counter. All right, we'll be back when it's almost there. All right, we're in the home stretch on this kneading. In fact, that goes my timer saying I got a minute left. You can never overwork your dough if you're kneading it by hand. You can by machine, and then you'll know your dough is overworked if it tears apart. Ever get there? And to be transparent, I almost thought about doing this by machine with the camera off. But I'm being real and doing it by hand the whole way. I mean, after you've done this a while, you'll know when it's ready without even having to look at it or feel it. It just takes practice. I mean, granted, yeah, I might mess up every once in a while with it now, but it just takes practice to learn how to do something. I'm sure a pizza crust mix at the store has to be over $1 a pack, easily. But with the ingredients here I have, it probably didn't cost half that. And this is just the basic dough. I could add garlic powder to this, or herbs that I've dried myself and grew myself. You know, to shape it into a ball, you just want to tuck it underneath itself. Isn't it pretty? So if it bounces back like that, I hope this shows up on the camera. So now we're just gonna put a little bit of oil in the bottom of this bowl. I didn't even clean the flour out. That's how much you don't have to do more work. All right, you wanna grease the top with it. Then what I'm gonna do is put a piece of saran wrap over this and put it in the oven with the light on. You can also use the Instant Pot with a slow cooker lid and use the yogurt low setting and tell it how long you want it to rise. I've done that. Or you can turn on your dehydrator if you have like a box dehydrator, like an Excalibur, and turn it on for like a half hour or before you start mixing it up, then turn it off and put it in there. Any way will work as long as your water is warm. If your water isn't warm, you can still let it rise in the refrigerator overnight if you want it for the next day. As long as it's airtight and can't get any air into it, then you might have a crust, and we don't want that either. All right, let's get this covered. And I like to put the time that it's gonna be ready on the wrap, just so I don't forget if my electric goes off and I can't remember. So we'll be back. You want to preheat your oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. If you grease your pan as well as I did, you don't need to add flour to your counter. Now I'm just trying to deflate it and get it into a circle as much as possible. And get it so you just want to go in each direction and lifting it up when you get to the end. You want to grease the bottom of your pan, bit of your pan by a little drop here. My mom always put cornmeal dusting underneath the pizza, and I just never cared for it. All right, then you're just gonna plop your pizza down. All right. So even if you roll it out too big, you just bring it back together. And I just do like you would a regular pie crust. Just take your fingers around the outside to shape it. Now, if you are wanting to take it up a notch because you have gas, or if you just like flavor and garlic, melt some butter and some crushed garlic together on the stove and brush that around your crust after you get it pre-baked. I always like to jab it with a fork to try to get all those air bubbles out. All right, we're gonna do 425 for 8 to 9 minutes, depending on how hot your oven is. Now the pizza crust is out of the oven. Now you want to change the temperature of your oven to 350. And now we're gonna add our pizza sauce that I canned earlier this summer. And if you haven't seen that video, I'll leave a link to it up below. So it'll be down in the description box for you. And we're just gonna take a spoon and spread it out. All right. You want to use low moisture mozzarella. If you're ever interested in watching me make homemade mozzarella, drop a comment down below. If I would have had time today to make mozzarella, I would have. But this will do just fine. What are your favorite toppings? We're using ground beef and mushrooms today. The more of the mushrooms, the better. And don't put too much or your dough will be a little soggy. So I'm going to use this for loose meat sandwiches tomorrow with the French onion soup that I canned this September. And if you haven't seen that video, I'll leave a link to that as well. Italian garlic seasoning. You want to sprinkle high so it is evenly distributed. All right, now we're ready for the oven. And we're going to bake this for 20 minutes at 350. Well, how's it taste after 4 bites?
It's only 3.
Well,
Very good pizza.